Welcome everyone to the Walk with Faith podcast with our special guest and my dear friend, Michael Kopf. Hi, Michael.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I am doing actually quite well. I'm excited to be in a new year.
Right. It's interesting you started it off with that because I have a question for you.
Go for it.
They say the new year. So my son, so Ryan sent me something and people talk about this. When you do the calculations, which don't ask me how to do that, we're missing a month. And they
We
say
are
that there was originally 13 months and that the new year really starts in what, April or
April
springtime?
1st. That's why it's called April Fool's Day.
Right. So can you tell people about that real quick since we're
Sure.
on it?
So the original calendar we were on was the Julian calendar, and being that it was created by Julius Caesar, each of the months were there was 13 months, and I believe the months were around 20 to 25 days each. And I forget what year we decided to switch to the Gregorian calendar, but when we did, we went to a 12-month, 12 zodiac cycle instead of 13. And we lost a month. And that's why we have leap year, is to make up the time every 4 years of that missing day. As they say, it equals out to that 1 month every 4 years. So that's why there's the leap year. And originally, the new year, when you think about it, would be springtime. So April 1st would have been spring. The winter was over for everybody. Plants were growing. So April 1st was originally the new year. And there's a lot of people talking about now that they call it April Fool's Day because everybody celebrated New Year's in January instead of April.
That kind of makes sense, especially here in Texas. It's been really cold, and I'm like, I don't want to go out on New Year's and freeze. It's been really cold because imagine everybody going out when it's warm and everything is blooming and blossoming, starting fresh. That Happy
Yes,
New Year.
and there is something unique about this year as well, is with everybody talking about bringing in the positivity. If you do numerology, 2025 is 9, which is completion. So it's like we're at the end of a cycle, getting ready to start a new one.
Right, right. I feel like maybe you have something to say on this. I feel like there's quite a bit of pushback, almost like we're purging, um, like pushing the limits, like we're purging the negativity. And then there's pushback from people who still are operating in a fear-based mentality or negative mindset when we're shifting or we're trying to end that cycle, right? Or we are ending that cycle and we're shifting into a more positive, loving way of living and thinking, breathing, everything.
Right. They're calling it the Great Awakening or Awakening, and there's a lot of people that are saying we're already awakened, and so there's a little bit of pushback about that. But what in essence they're saying is we're returning to our divine inspired selves, and I like to say our divine birthright. And what that means is we are going into a frame of life is going to unfold for us. We're going to be manifesting more, and we have to be more aware and consciously aware of what we're asking for. And the shadows have been coming up because your metaphysical or your spiritual side doesn't want to start a new system full of the old patterns. And so, what does the shadow side do? The shadow side brings up all your non beneficial patterns for the new you so that you can look at them, clear them,
Right,
and move on. And
right.
so that's where I think people are getting a lot of pushback is because they don't like looking at what they haven't had to look at for many years. And now it's like, yep, it's there and it ain't going away.
Right, because it's exposing that shadow. It's exposing what needs to be purged or worked on. Wow, that's very interesting, Michael. Thank you. Because I'm noticing that um with with people that come into my life too, it'll almost be like, I don't want to say a test, but showing me or a reminder of what I've already worked through or experienced, and it'll just be like a little taste. Do you remember this, Molly? Is this what you want? Or continue on this path? I'm like, I don't want that. That's not what I want. But it's almost like just a reminder, or if there's anything else that needs to be worked on, to make sure to go inward, work on it, cleanse it, purge it out. Um, so I personally on my journey keep moving forward, but yeah, I think that's going to be really helpful for people to hear what you just said.
Well, and an even bigger bonus on that is I've been thinking about this lately is a lot of people are struggling with things and are giving up because they're like, I've done the work. I've done this. It still shows up. And they feel
Mhm.
like they've made no progress. And so I was thinking about this the other day and going, the progress isn't that you won't see it. It's the progress is how you see it and how fast you see it. And I was doing an episode with Chastity Munez about addictions and everything, and she was saying, yeah, I relapsed about something. And I pointed out to her, I said, yes, but look at instead of it taking years for you to realize you were in that pattern, it took you what, weeks, months? And she said, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the growth. That's the progress. You see the shadow aspect faster. You're more aware of it, what it's doing to you. And a way to look at it is not that you haven't made any progress, as well as another way to look at it is take an onion and you take one layer off. There's so many more layers there to get to the onion that you want. And that's how our shadows is. Every issue is a layer within a layer. And as much progress as you make, like I may have done work on confidence and then have a podcast issue comes up and I'm like, oh man. But then I'm like, no, wait, I can do this and I'll bounce back faster. Or a guest may challenge me on something and make me question. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's not that I've faltered and lost my way. It's all of our shadow essences are intertwined. And so different things will trigger them, bringing them up. And what the universe is doing is saying, yes, you may be aware of it in this form, but are you aware that it can show up over here and over
Internally.
here and over here? And so it's the universe
Yeah,
is saying, if you truly want to clear this out, we're going to totally do it and
right.
we'll help you and work with you. And so that's the progress is being able to find it and see it for what it is on every level and every aspect.
That's so true. Yeah, because it can come in all different shapes and sizes and look many. I don't know why I'm saying like masks, but it is. It's like taking off the mask, but it can come in one form and then you get triggered or you have to see it. Um, it, I'm almost getting a vision, Michael, of somebody who can come with like a huge smile, right? And trigger you in that way. And even though they're very charming or they say they want to help, there's something that will the universe or the divine God, I would say God, right, will remind you like they may hit a trigger or something in your shadow, even though they're really nice. Or someone could come and is very cold and could trigger that same emotion just in a different way. It's just we're going to be tested on all these different levels um, just to help us grow. But I love what you said because it's not like we're not going to experience it. It's not like we're not going to see it. It's for our development and progress. And like for me, it took me 18 years. Now it would never take me 18 years. It would take me, I don't even know how, I would be like done. So that's progress. Doesn't mean it's not going to enter my field. It probably
Well, and
will.
right, and the other thing too is like I'm a little bit guilty of this in some aspects of, feeling like you've got a grasp on something, you can see it, you can handle it when it comes up, and then get blindsided about something and you're like,
Right.
you shut down and you're like, oh my God, I thought I had done all this work. I thought I had made all this progress, and you start to question yourself and beat yourself up a little bit because you faltered. And we forget that we are divine beings having a human
An
experience.
experience.
And so we're not going to respond the same way every time. And yes, we are going to falter, but it's like, a line about that actually that I think sums it up the best was Christian Bale's, I think it was Batman Begins, the first one,
Okay.
when he fell down the well and his dad went and got him, and he goes, why do we fall down? So we can get back up.
Right.
That's what it is. It's how do we lift ourselves up? How do we,
Yeah,
when we fall? It's not that we're never going to fall, but the question is, how are we going to let that fall affect us?
exactly.
And the beauty of my understanding with the metaphysics is I can fall and be in a funk for, say, a month, and then one day just wake up and be like, you know what? No longer going to let this affect me and get out of it. And it's just that easy. Or I can fall, get in a funk for 30 seconds and say, okay, that was enough. I feel better
Mm-hmm.
now. And there is no right or wrong about it. We
No,
take as long as we need to take, but we always have the choice to get out when we want to.
it's true. It's true. We do have that power. We have that choice. So if it's like something that we don't enjoy feeling, we have that choice. We can either stay in that or move past it because we're not perfect. We are going to fall. We are going to have the opportunity to make a choice and stand back up, dust ourselves off, put a smile on our face, be like, okay, I got this.
Yeah,
Keep moving
and
forward.
actually, I'm going to challenge you on that, that we're not perfect.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay.
I, because this is the way I view perfection and being perfect is we look at your countertops, your tabletops, you know, all these surfaces that are totally smooth to the touch, right? So you would say it's perfectly smooth. You put it under a microscope, it ain't nearly smooth. It's more like a mountain range. But our perception of it is perfectly smooth.
Right.
So, therefore, what I took to understand is when we see ourselves flawed, by accepting our flaws,
Right.
we become perfect because we
Right.
see ourselves perfectly
Wait.
smooth with the flaws that we have.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that we're like not perfect in that way. I love that you said that. We're perfectly imperfect. We're exactly how we're supposed to be where we are right now. And that's why I feel like loving the self the way that we are. Like literally, this is something I talked to about someone else. I have so many war wounds and scars. Like I don't want to gross anyone out, but like literally one of like my wounds is my finger got chopped off in my past life in this lifetime in a door, and they had to stitch it back on with 12 stitches. It literally healed pretty much perfectly, almost perfectly. But I am perfect exactly the way I'm supposed to be right now for everything that I've gone through. And I really think it's about acknowledging that within the self, loving the self, and coming back to whether it's source, the creator, like, because really we are his creation and he is perfect.
You know what's beautiful about when you say the word imperfect?
What?
Split it into two words.
I'm perfect.
I
You
had
know?
someone point that out to me one day as I was looking at different words where it's
Right,
got the I am in front of it, and they were like, "You're saying I am this," and I was like, "Whoa, that is so
right.
cool! I'd never thought about that."
Michael, break down appreciate or appreciate love. The two words together.
I
I
know,
mean,
I love
it's
that
not
word.
it yeah, I mean it's not like the same, but if you break it apart, right? Hate versus love. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But that's
Uh,
cool.
yeah, and it's kind of like neuro programming in a way because we're saying, even though we're not saying we're perfect, we are saying we're perfect to the
Imperfect,
universe.
imperfect. Yeah, I know.
And so the universe doesn't go by what necessarily we say, it goes by the emotion, the intention, and the thoughts behind what we say. And so that's why I loved when my friend William Henry pointed out to me in Tarot, you have well, some decks have the swords. And he's like, this these are all about communication. And I was like, how are swords communication? He goes, take the S in the beginning, move it to the end. What do you have?
Words.
Exactly. And I was like, oh my God, that's so obvious. And I've talked to so many people that
Communication.
are readers, and they're like, yeah, the swords are communication,
Hmm.
and that they are talking about words. And I was like, man, how did
Yeah,
it take me so long to figure that out?
right, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah. Air, so like communication, words. See, I read different. I'm not really reading the cards, I suppose. I'm just seeing, um, so I'm like a conscious channel. So I've graduated from channeling to where like I couldn't remember anything. Thank you. Thank you. I just talked to Ryan about this too. You're the second person that I'm talking about. So I've graduated. Like I've noticed I've been graduating with the work I've been doing. No, stop it. Stop it. I can share with you. You're my friend. It was very cool because, as you develop your gifts, right? I mean, there was a period of time where like I would channel and I would remember nothing at all. Um, and now I can channel and remember everything. But it's so cool. I love it. And then what's happening, Michael, is like I'm getting like so I can see what's going on. Like even if a card comes out, like I'll get all these messages coming through. and like see it, and then I'll like taste things, and then I'll feel things. So it's so cool when you learn to develop like those senses. Um, wow, it's so
Yeah.
cool. But with swords, yeah. I don't know, you got me on tarot now. So I just
And
did some readings before we got on our conversation.
yeah, and I'll share just between us that the whole this was honoring you, not the
I
we're not
know.
worthy that
No,
people
I know.
use. It's like, yeah,
That reminds me of Wayne's World. Do you
I
remember
know.
that? Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing I can share with you that, because you mentioned 12 and we were talking about now the 12 months and the 12 zodiac is I did an episode last night that airs Wednesday. We pre-recorded it, and one of the things we were talking about is the Council of 12 and how
Wow.
12 shows up in a lot of things. And the original Council of 12 became the Council of Nine, but 12, there's 12 tribes with the missing 13th tribe. And we were discussing how there's something significant to that because there's a science fiction series called Battlestar Galactica. They're the 12 planets in their system are 12 colonies, and they were missing the 13th colony, which was Earth, and they were trying to find it. And
Oh,
so we were
cool.
like, yeah, there's disclosure one.
Mm-hmm.
The Knights of the Round Table were to the Zodiac, which is 12,
Wow.
and the 13th would be Arthur. And pardon my dogs. Apparently, there's a lot of squirrels out in the cold.
No, it's okay. Mine's making noise too, like right over there.
But I mean, we have 12 hours day, 12 hours night. We have, 12 is everywhere in our world. And the
Question when you're done. When you're done, I have a
interesting
question.
thing about it is when you take 12, 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 is spirituality. And so it's kind of like we're being spiritually awakened without knowing we're being awakened
Uh-oh. Hold
because
on. Did I just mess it? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay.
Because, yeah, and so, I mean, 12 is such an interesting number, and we look at, and I believe the 12th used to be the middle of every month. I think I read somewhere it was the Ides of every month. And when we became the new calendar system, going to 12 months to make up for the missing month, it became the 15th. So the 15th was not originally the middle of the month. And I was surprised to learn because I grew up with Shakespeare and he was always beware the Ides of March. So I thought this was some big, thing. And I looked it up, and Ides of March just simply means the middle of March. There's the Ides of April, Ides of June, Ides of
Okay.
September. There's every month has an
Right.
Ides, but nobody pays attention to it.
But beware of the one in March. What did Shakespeare mean, do you think?
I think he was trying to point out that so in the case of it's in this his story, Julius Caesar, and I think what he was trying to portray to everyone was Caesar was trying to awaken the people too fast, and they viewed him as a dictator because he was trying to give the freedom to the people, not the senators. He was pretty much dissolving the Senate and giving the
Oh.
power back to the people the way it was originally. And the senators didn't like it, and so They plotted and removed him in the middle of the month when they were in session.
Wow.
Hence, beware
Yeah.
the Ides of March. And a lot of people viewed it as, oh, death to the tyrant, death to this and that. And he wasn't the tyrant. He was simply trying to restore the republic and was getting blowback from it. And the people who were corrupt and making all their wealth off of being the senator
Right.
and abusing their power was like, nope, we're not giving this up.
Thank you for that.
Of course.
So speaking of 12 verses 13, there are a lot of people that fear the number 13. So I know Friday the 13th was the day that the Knights Templar were taken and
Uh-uh.
tried. That's what I've learned.
No, they weren't taken and tried. They were
Burned at this.
obliterated.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, yeah, they were burnt. Weren't they burned at the stake?
They were burned at the stake, murdered, pretty much cut down, and it all happened in one night because so the reason the third Friday the 13th has such the connotation is people view the Knights Templar were an order who was getting too powerful and were committing heresies. And so they viewed the papal was taking them down because so the history of the Templars to set this up were they only answered to the Pope. They were not held responsible to any other church, so they didn't like that. And so like the archbishops didn't like when the Templars were around because they couldn't boss them around. And they were protectorates of the road, the holy roads
Right.
and the paths. And so they had amassed power because people were afraid of them because they would not leave until the area was safe and you got to your destination. So people started borrowing money from the Templars because they could get it from point A to point B safely. Well, when a certain person who I won't name, but I'll just say was pretty much the head honcho of France.
The king. Why won't you say?
Well, because it was the king of France and he owed money to the Templars and
Mhm.
couldn't pay his debt. And so the Templars were just simply saying, hey, don't forget you had this debt with us, and the king didn't like the fact that he was owed money, so he went to the papal, and the Pope said the Knights Templar haven't done anything, so you can't touch them. You need to pay your bill in essence. So the king got together with his court and they said we need to get rid of this debt. What can we do? So they created these fake charges against the Knights Templar. The Pope hears them. His bishops in France confirm what the king says. So the Pope says, "Oh, these knights have lost their way. So we have to punish them. But how can we punish them? Because we can't. They're basically the military of the Pope." And so they're like, how do we get rid of him? And the king goes, don't worry, I got this. And raided every house, every church,
Took them in.
everywhere the Knights Templars were. And there was no warning. So that's why they call it the massacre of Friday the 13th, was because knights were being cut down without their swords or armor on. And it was just, they didn't care. They were killing the families, everybody. And then the king said, "Oh, we got rid of this evil order, and his debt was forgiven." because there's no one to pay it to.
Yeah.
So that's why they had to go underground, is because, yeah, they were being persecuted for the fact that they were doing what they were supposed to do.
Yeah. It's interesting how that kind of plays out in today's society, doing what you're supposed to do. If greed and power versus integrity and paying debts. There are a lot of people who will hurt others in order to keep their money or not pay debts, like it's I see that in like today's society, I guess. Just
Right.
not as, yeah,
And some debts can't be erased like that because they're, even though, so this is going to get interesting, is so the Knights Templars are gone. So the King of France pretty much is like, I don't have to pay this debt now. Ha ha. I get to keep my wealth, and ends up losing power in the end. And it's kind of, and it's hard for me to say this because I personally don't put a lot of weight into it, but it seems like karmic justice came through. And he didn't realize that when you make a debt of owing money to someone, you're also making an energy debt. And so the energy debt never gets cleared until it balances. So you can sit there and go, oh, I declared bankruptcy, so all my monetary debts are cleared. I'm good. I can start over fresh. Not actually quite so true, is you still have that energy of, I borrowed this and I need to make it right and repay it. And so that is another thing of why it's interesting when people are like, oh, running up all these debts and are so excited when government bodies or organizations go, you know what, we're just going to forgive this. And they're like, oh, I feel so relieved. But then they're not really relieved because they still are struggling with things, is because they didn't take care of the energetics behind it. They only took care of the surface.
right. Yeah. I believe that some people place debts on other people that don't well, I don't want to necessarily say don't belong, but sometimes they will place like monetary or which is energy onto other people, even though they have contracts that debt does not belong to that person. Um, I don't know how, I think that's a little bit different in a way because there are people that will try and do that. But yeah, I mean, if you're responsible for your debts, whether it's in the physical or it is tied energetically as well, we have to handle that. So that's interesting how that happened with the king and the Knights Templar. Tell me really quickly, is that why there's such a fear of the number 13? And someone mentioned about they don't have a floor 13. Is that true?
You can go on elevators and it'll go 12, 14. They won't
Why?
put 13 because 13 has an unlucky connotation to it now. And it's based on Friday the 13th with the Knights Templar. It was a very unlucky day for them. So a lot of people view 13 as the most unlucky number, and bad things will happen. And it also has to do with the moon cycles. And I think there's a lot of times Friday the 13th falls on the full moon. And when it does, I have a lot of friends in the medical field who have said it
Yeah.
is absolutely true. They have more cases of the most
Yeah.
bizarre
Mm-hmm.
on that day than any other day. There is
Yeah.
something about the moon's effect on people mixed with it being Friday the 13th that makes an extremely crazy and bizarre night. And it kind of is when you think, when you look back and you remember how the energy felt, if you can feel the energies, the energy is different on those days. And a lot of people don't realize what effect the moon has.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's a lot of, that's why 13 is so unlucky, is because it's either going to bring out the craziness or it's
Yeah.
just so much bad connotation to it. So,
Yeah.
or luck, people will avoid 13.
See, maybe I'm different because I've changed that in my mind and my reality that 13 is a lucky number and Friday the 13th is now a lucky day. That is where my mind is going and where I'm shifting to. I refuse to, not that I don't acknowledge it, I do, but now moving forward, wanting to shift out of being so fearful. I think the full moon is beautiful, but yes, people, it can affect people's energy
Yeah, and here's
very
another
much.
thing that will kind of blow your mind a little bit about 13th
Okay.
is if you're in a fear-based system and you're afraid of the 13th, 3 and 1 is 4, which is foundation in
Mhm.
numerology. So if you're going into the 13th with the fear of the 13th and how unlucky and how crazy it
Right.
is, your entire foundation is being built on
Here,
fear of
you're
everything. And
okay. Let's go even further. So now that's in your imagination because your reality is your reality, right? So, yes, bad things can happen really, truly on any day. But if we're operating in that fear-based mentality or that belief system, and then especially, right, we're like, okay, the 13th is a really bad day, unlucky day. And then, just so happens to be the full moon, and then it's affecting your foundation. So, see how that is like a domino effect versus thinking, okay, this is going to be a lucky day. Some people give away free donuts or free tattoos on Friday the 13th. It's like looking for the positive rather than looking at the negative or the fear-based beliefs.
right. And another thing that's most interesting is when you look at a lot of the instances of like a lot of people who were doing bizarre and had bizarre injuries, and they ask, what happened. They go, well, I knew this was the 13th. I knew with the full moon it was going to be crazy, and I knew something was going to happen, and it did. And so it's so for me, what I do is I take a step back and I go, so if you didn't go into the 13th with that fear base, would you still have gotten hurt? Or did you make yourself get hurt to bring forth what you were afraid of?
So he fed the beast of fear and manifested it or brought it into fruition by his
Yeah.
emotions and words and thoughts and beliefs.
And if you're, and so like you were saying, even if you're superstitious and, go, yeah, Friday the 13th is a day to avoid, and you're afraid of, that is not limited to that. That foundation that you've made doesn't sit there and go, okay, so for 24 hours, we're going to do this, and then
No,
we're gone. It is every day for as long as you have it. And so every day you're out and about and something happens, you have to step back and really look at, did I make this happen?
Yeah, set it in
Or
motion.
did this really truly accidentally happen? And I mean, I can't say there's no such thing as an accident because things do happen that we're not expecting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, I own, is there somewhere in my subconscious or conscious mind created that to bring awareness to something? And
Right.
so that's why I say it's hard to know if something's truly an accident or if it's a manifestation.
I think everything is happening the way it's supposed to, whether it's going to teach you something or bring awareness to you, right? So it's you're going to acknowledge it. So we're awake and
It
not
is,
like,
and it kind of is like an expanded version of the mirror effect. And I don't know if I shared this in the first episode, what the mirror effect is.
I don't think you did. Please educate Michael.
So, in metaphysics, the mirror effect is when you look in a mirror, what do you see? You see yourself. And at times you look in a mirror and you don't recognize yourself. Well, it's because who you're looking at or who you are at that moment is different. And so, what the mirror effect shows and says is, for example, hypothetically, you and I meet in a restaurant, and I say, wow, your hair looks really great, and I love the light about you. Well, the mirror effect says, in reality, I'm saying, I love my hair. I love the light about myself because what I see
Right,
in you, I see in
right,
me.
right.
The flip side of that is when you are in line and someone is like maybe on their phone and they're not moving forward and you're in a time crunch and you're like, why isn't this person moving? And they're getting you so frustrated and so annoyed. I hate to say it, people,
But that's
but you're
also a
seeing
reflection.
in yourself how you annoy and how you frustrate people.
Yeah,
And so it's a double-edged sword is it's you don't always see the best, you don't always see the worst. It's
right.
balance.
The light and the dark, the shadow. We have a shadow. It's exposing the now going back. I love that how we like circle back. It's exposing the shadow within ourselves so we become aware rather than bury it or be blind to it. It's there to expose what we need to know so we
Right.
can address it.
And one thing I'd like to kind of expound on is we keep saying the word shadow, and there's a lot of different views of what shadows are. A
Okay.
lot of people are like, those are like in the paranormal community, shadow beings. They're to be avoided. They're vampire suckers. They're creatures that are void of any emotion and will suck you dry. So they're viewed as dark and evil entities. And your shadow self is, people are like, this is the dark side of you. And in reality, so the shadow isn't light or dark. The shadow is just a part of yourself that you don't see, you don't want to see,
Hmm.
that you need to see. And it is the part of you that says, I love you enough that I'm going to show this to you until you get it because I'm not going to let you just slide off and go,
Yeah.
okay, tell yourself. oh, I made this great evolution or enlightened state and this or that, and delude
Right.
yourself. They're there
It's
to
for a
be your
purpose.
true essence guide. And
Right.
so when I hear people talk about doing the shadow work and everything, I'm like, yeah, you're looking at parts of yourself. You need to look at it to evolve and move up or move on or move down, however whatever your path is at the time. And so shadows
Right.
aren't to be feared and not to be
Mm-mm.
thought, oh man, shadows are actually, it's like these are the ultimate gifts.
There's nothing wrong with the shadow. I think the shadow is beautiful. I was probably in some of my most shadowy moments that got me out of very dangerous situations, right? Not saying that like I went after people and hurt them, no, but I had to put on my warrior gear. I had to see what I didn't want to see, acknowledge it, do the work on myself, and really dive deep and feel some really painful emotions or acknowledge some things about myself. But also, we have to learn to love all of us. It's even the parts we don't want to acknowledge and we don't want to see. But those moments are your shadow, or those parts of you can be very powerful.
Right. And there are things we need to be careful of too, though. And one for me is so I grew up, and I'll admit, around Star Wars and seeing the Jedi Order and being like, man, these are the people you want to be. They're calm, they're aware of everything, they don't get emotionally blinded. These
Mhm.
are the perfect people. So I set into my life going, okay, I'm going to emulate this. So I'm not going to let bullies tear me down. I'm not going to let the words that people say tear me down. And so I joined an organization who was their purpose is in the indigenous peoples tribes is the path of boyhood to manhood, the rite of passage. And there's designed to help communicate and to help, feel what you need to feel because
Right.
society for
Getting
men have
cozy.
always said, don't cry, you can't be weak, you don't have intuition. That's only if females have intuition. And I was like, nope, I got one. I
Everyone
trust
does.
mine.
Yeah.
And so I was in there one day and somebody said something and they go to me and he goes, how does that make you feel? And I looked at him and I said, well, that, really hurt. And that statement, the fact that they keep saying it to me is making me angry. And I'm saying it just like I am now. And he's like, but you're not angry. I was like, yes, I am. He's like, no. And so I was like, why do you think I'm not angry? He goes, well, you're not screaming, you're not raising your voice, you're not letting it out, you're suppressing it. And I was like, and I had to sit back and think, am I suppressing it? And so I was like, well, I don't think I am suppressing it, but sometimes it does come out sideways to where somebody can come up to me and like trip me, and I'm already in a kind of low vibe, and it's like,
Right.
man, that just pushed me over the edge. And so I'll just burst out, and I'm like, and I'll apologize to the person and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have flown off like that. I was having a bad day. I didn't mean to take it out on you. I'm so sorry.
Right.
And so then I was like, huh, maybe I am suppressing anger. But then I realized no. I process it differently, but I also know people see what they see. And so if this is the pattern of what they need to see,
Right.
if I'm going to show them that I've done this, I got to go through their ways. And so I would scream and they'd be like, "How do you feel?" And I'd be like, "Honestly, I'd feel tired because I'm like, this was a lot of energy exerted here."
Yeah,
But
exactly. So you're
I'd just tell them, I feel better. And they'd let me move on. And so I felt like, and I'm not with them anymore, and it's not because I felt like I couldn't be authentic. It's quite the opposite is they showed me my true authentic. And so therefore I was like, yeah, I made the choice of I can still,
right.
argue and, try to fit into your mode of what authentic is, or I could be my true authentic. And so I was like, I'm going to be my true authentic. So I'm going to step aside and let you guys do what you're doing. More power
Right.
to you. Nothing wrong with them.
Right, because just because their version and of what their perception is of what anger looks like, right? So it looks like fighting, screaming, all of that. That is not necessarily you. So you could be alchemizing or transmuting or however you're processing anger in what's authentic for Michael, for you. It's not necessarily screaming and overexerting that energy, right?
Right. And I will say what one of the things that I got out of it though that surprised me was it actually helped me solidify my warrior side. And what I mean by that is so when people arrive to be initiated into this organization, you're greeted by a man who is dressed in all black, has some black on his face, ash, and has no emotion. They will try to get emotion out of you, but you can't give them emotion back because
Interesting.
what it is it's so when you come in and you're greeted, you're you're told, see this man for, and or follow me. You're given strict instructions,
Mhm.
point blank, precise, and the objective is to get people out of their heads and let them process and get out everything they want through each steps of orientation of getting them in for the weekend. And so everybody experiences it differently. And one of the fun facts of it that I always thought was really funny was how I could be standing there and say to someone, "Follow me," and someone goes, "Why should I follow you? What do you do? You're not telling me anything." And you can see them getting emotionally risen and
Really?
going and being triggered. And you just standing there. And when they're done, you go, "Follow me." And this person is
Yeah,
triggered. And you get to the next step. They go through, they do what they're supposed to do.
right.
And the people behind the tables, like, there's tables at certain areas where you can do things. And sometimes the people would go, well, this person's being really this or that. And they go, well, that's interesting. You see it that way. And go through and, do what we need to do. And at the end, they're all huddled up. And we deliver a message of what this weekend's about, what they're going to be going through. And everybody's like, oh. And one thing that's funny is if somebody is like, if we have the time and say like two people were late, we'll have those two people stand up and say, why were you late? Why did you feel you had the right to make everybody else here late to start because we had to wait for you? And it's a way of pointing out to people, yeah, there's impacts. But here's the interesting thing. We also, if you were like, say, 5 minutes early, it's logged you were 5 minutes early. They will call you and have you stand up and say, why were you 5 minutes early? Do you realize you inconvenienced everybody here because we had to stop what we were doing to prepare because you were early? You were told to be here at this time. And so it points out that, wow, I never thought about when I was early, what
Yeah,
impact that had on someone
of course.
and what impact it had being late. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You always think, oh, I'm being so nice being early
No,
and
not
everything.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Yeah.
So that's what I mean is there's great things that comes out of it because yeah, there are so many things you don't realize and you're like, "Oh, that's me.
Right.
Oops." And so you pick and choose. Like, I'll still be early to some places, but it's places I know who are like, if I have a volunteer shift somewhere, I'll be early and I can get signed in, vested up, talk amongst friends,
Right.
and I'm not interfering with anything going on at the venue.
Right. Right.
Whereas at a restaurant, if I'm early, I know I'm going to be sitting there by myself waiting. It's on me. So I'm at choice of either getting flustered and keep looking at my watch, going, where is this person? How come they're not early like I am? Or I can go, well, let's just start letting go of the day that I don't need anymore. So I can be more present when they
Right.
do get here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's gifts of learning the perception and seeing how are you going to let it impact you.
hmm I love that. Thank you, Michael. Okay, I want to ask about you really quickly and from last time you were on the show to where you are now, because I think you talked about a couple of your shows. Can you let people know what shows you're doing right now and how things have shifted for you?
Sure. So I'm still doing, and I'm premiering tonight, well, I say tonight. So this is being recorded on June 7th, so, or January 7th. Wow, my mind is way off. January 7th, I'm premiering my Tuesday night show, The Energy That Surrounds Us. And Wednesday nights, I have, and I'll be premiering tomorrow night with a pre recorded episode, my series Writing Through the Unknown. And so these two shows are my little babies that I created with help and or on my own. And so the energy that surrounds us is my paranormal journey and sharing topics of the unexplained and delving into topics that to me are very interesting and that I feel like people should know. Then on
Yeah.
Wednesdays, Writing Through the Unknown, I delve more into disclosure and esoteric topics. And so esoteric simply means hidden from. And so I look at topics that most people see in every day but don't give any thought to because They're things that are easily dismissed and are just kind of laughed off, almost like conspiracy theories sometimes. And so those are my journeys. And the reason I single those out is I do each episode based on promoting my guest and sharing my experiences and bringing as much positive and light I can to everything. And being on Spotify, they have a new thing that came out called Wrapped. And so I was watching it. And so, admittedly, when I look at my Spotify channel for uploading episodes, I noticed a lot of them aren't played. And so I'm like, it's okay. It doesn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to learn that both of those shows share one Spotify channel, and that channel was in the top 25% in 2024 of video podcasting. And so I was like, whoa, how did I do that? And
It's awesome.
I talked to people about it, and the common thread is they love how authentic I am on the show and that it shows. And I don't script and I don't like questions. I don't do any of that in advance, and everything just flows. And so it's really fun to do that. And on Thursdays in the afternoon, we're going back to twice a month is Paranormal Versus,
Okay.
where I have my Kel Ridley Atkinson and her husband Matt Atkinson. They got married in July last year. Kel created the show and I co-hosted with her from the beginning, and we just are continuing our journey. And the interesting thing is because all three of these shows are on Spotify, the energy that surrounds us and writing through the unknown, they say the style of the show is storytelling. And I was like, yeah, that fits it pretty well. And Paranormal Versus is nonconformist. And I was like, yeah, that fits that show too. And
I like your
so,
shows.
well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so, November of 2024, I had to remember what year we're in. I was asked by a guest of mine who was on Writing Through the Unknown if I wanted to do an election episode
Oh
for,
yeah.
and so I was like, okay. So we ended up on the air for 7 hours, and man, my voice paid the price for that.
Yeah.
But then we had so much fun. She did an episode on JFK's assassination, President John F. Kennedy. And so she asked me back on. And that night, before we got started, she's like, do you want to be a regular? So I actually ended up joining
Oh
Emily
wow.
Men's House, the Beast System. And that show, we deep dive different controversial topics that's going on in the world and or to the US. And so that's a lot of fun. So I have now four shows
Wow.
that
Congratulations.
I'm a part of. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so happy for you. That's awesome. So you're busy. Busy, busy.
It, yeah, it depends on, and I took 2 weeks off of shows except for my end of year special in December and did some recharging and some looking into how am I going to do everything and finalize all the changes for the shows So I did a little bit of work. And this year, I normally am booked out my shows to March or April already because I have so many guests in mind and people message me to say, "Hey, can I be a guest?" And I'm like, "All right, let's schedule." And this year, this season, I've decided because when I would book out so far, I would meet people along the way and be like, "Man, I wish I could have you on right now, but
Yeah.
I have to wait because I'm already booked to this date," or I'd start doing a lot of special episodes on the side and other projects on the side. And so I was like, man, this is getting, a little bit, I use the word cattywampus, but just seemingly out of control, even though for me it was all controlled. I was smooth going through it all, making
Right.
it work. But I was like, this year, this season, I have every Tuesday and Wednesday shows, two Thursdays a show, and temporarily Sunday night shows, which in March are switching to Thursday nights.
Wow.
Maybe we may keep them on Sunday. So we're debating, but the thing too is though is I look at what's going on and I'm like, yeah, so I have a project where there's a foundation that I'm working with to help bring them to light in a way that makes them more, they want to be more approachable because the name to the foundation kind of has a connotation to some people of being like, ooh, I don't want to bother them because they're, famous, they're up there, and I'm just a little person, and
Talking
my
about Michael.
experience may not be so big. And so my objective was last year we started where I was bringing some of their people on the show and just showcasing them as normal everyday people, showcasing where, how they use their gifts, so what they use their gifts for. And they were getting positive feedback. So we'll be doing that more this year. And so I have set aside a specific night for that. And so I'm like,
You're very
yeah,
mysterious right now about like who's he talking about?
well, stay tuned and watch, and
Mm-hmm.
it should be, I think we're going to start it up maybe in March because they have a big event in February. So maybe
Okay.
start it up then. But yeah, and amongst all of this, I was, I realized in my book, I happily have, I actually think 13 or 17 chapters. I'm not sure.
Are you done with
But
your book?
I felt like I was, but then I realized I looked back at it and I am far from done with the book because I realized, like, for example, my paranormal journey, what I decided to share in there from start to current. Well, I did little paragraphs of every paranormal experience I've had. And when I sized it by what someone said is normal size for a book, it's like 50 pages of paragraphs of experiences. There's nothing tying it all together.
Okay.
So I realized I got to go back and rewrite every chapter because everything is eh, not a flowing story.
Got it.
So
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out, I've stalled in trying to figure out how to get my brain to go, let's turn this into a flowing story. Then here's what happened. Here's what happened. This is why this happened. This is why this happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, struggling a little bit with that. And
You'll do it. It'll come
I'm
to you.
also wondering if I should divide that paranormal chapter and my metaphysical chapter because they're the two largest chapters that are like books in a chapter.
Maybe. So are you saying to divide it into two different books or just,
Or I might do that, or I might go paranormal part one,
oh yeah.
paranormal part two.
Okay. Yeah.
But and because the other reason why I'm struggling a little bit with the verbiage of tying everything together is I wrote this up as for when, and I don't mean this to sound the way it's going to sound, but
Okay.
when people like you go and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this, this, or this,"
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to talk about? They can, if I, my thought was, if I had a book, handed you the book, you could flip through, read the book, and go, "Hey, let's talk about this chapter," or "Let's talk about this chapter." And the chapters that, people were requesting a lot more about, I might pull out of the book and say, here's another book just on that. So here you go. Here's the stories of that. And so it was my way of introducing myself to people so that they would have an idea of what questions to ask me for interviews
That's actually a good
or
idea. I think that's a good
topics.
idea.
Yeah, and then the topics that were most positive, come out with a book just on that.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. Follow your guidance on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know when it'll ever get done, but
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it's gonna be amazing.
yeah, and the beauty of it is a friend of mine, Chris, who I met last year and have done some work with. He wrote a book, and I was telling him, yeah, everybody tells me I should write a book, but I just can't sit down and do it. I just don't feel like it's there. And he goes and said to me, you really ought to write the book. Writing books is more cathartic than you realize. You're not going to be rehashing and you're not going to be getting all emotional and bringing everything back up to the surface. It's actually more cathartic because you're going to be releasing it. And I was like, huh. And so when I started to approach it that way, I sat down and the chapters just started coming out. And I was able to create a table of contents. And I
Mm-hmm.
told myself, I want this, I can divide my life into this many chapters right now. And I
Yeah.
was also looking at, I always find it interesting with the books that I've read that it'll either say chapter one or it'll say the title of the chapter. I was like, to me, it always seems strange that you either get chapter number or title. So mine, I was like, chapter one, AKA, and I put a title to it.
I
So
like
I was
that.
like, I'm putting both. I'm gonna
That's
break the
cool.
mold.
Right. Why not? Why
Yeah,
not? That's awesome. Very cool,
but
Michael.
yeah, and I'm also being very careful to only share my perspective and experience about what I've experienced and not by that I mean like So there's a chapter in there I'm toying with keeping in there or taking out about my involvement in esoteric topics. And you know what I'm talking about. And it's a touchy subject because the information is somewhat sensitive, and I have two memories of it, but I've had several people fill in blanks,
Mm-hmm.
and I
I
haven't
know what
been
you're
able to
saying.
verify the blanks. So I don't want to include that, only trying to keep what
Right.
resonates with me and I recall. And so
Right.
it's that's where I'm being very cautious because I don't want to hang my hat on what someone says, and if it's wrong, have to go in and go, okay, here's an
No, you're
addendum
right.
to this chapter because found out this was wrong.
No, you're
So,
absolutely correct. Yeah, until you
yeah,
actually get the verification yourself. I, I agree with you.
yeah, and so I'm actually so I'm gonna put a disclaimer. You can edit this part out, but
Oh, don't make me do it. Don't
I,
make me. What
it's
is it?
not bad. It's just I don't know if it's a topic you want for the show.
What is it? Just say it.
So in 2024, early 2025, meaning the end of last year, early this year, I realized in talking with a lot of people about being in the programs
Oh, no, you're fine.
that everybody always shares the negative, and that's always the dark part. And we keep rehashing the dark and the trauma and everything. And don't get me wrong, I know it's there, and I know that there's, a lot to it. And it's sorry, there was something on my desk that was
No, you're good.
in a way that was bugging me.
Yeah.
But I sat down and said, this is my show. And I've already broken the mold with it by taking and doing shows focusing on women and their role in the programs because they don't feel like they have a voice and they haven't. And so I noticed that. So I decided, yeah, I'm bringing a voice for them, a
I
place
think
where
that's
they
awesome.
can speak. And I went a step further and said, we're moving into the light. We're moving into the positive. The dark aspect of it is collapsing. We're doing more good now with what we know we can do.
Mhm.
So I started reaching out to some of my friends in the programs and going, hey, can we talk about positive aspects that we can take from it? And a lot of my friends are like, hey, I'll be honest with you. I don't have any positives right now. I was like, that's fine. I'll still bring you on. We'll still talk. It's just a little, if you come across any, let me know. And I had a friend that said, well, it's interesting you talk about positives because we're going and we're helping rescue hybrid kids. I was like, that's awesome. We should be, talking about that. So we talked about it a little
Right.
bit.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
my goal this year is I brought on a co-host to help me with this. I don't think she fully realizes what she signed up for by agreeing to co-host this specific topic, but I'm going to try and with every guest I have about the programs, try and bring something positive
I think
to
that's
the
good.
episode.
I think that's wonderful. I love that, Michael. I think that's great.
Well,
As
thank
you
you.
should. You're welcome. You're welcome. See, shifting. That shift is going to make a difference. Finding something good.
And I think I started to realize so everybody who's gone through this has their own experiences. And so nobody no so it's like I can't go up to somebody and say, "Hey, what do you know about this?" Because chances are they weren't a part of that. We all had our own specific projects, we had our own specific programs. We may have been trained in the same place, but then shifted off depending on what you could do. And so I've kind of noticed a lot of my memories are blocked off for security of what was being done, and in essence, security of those people around me. So I don't, you know, push on those. But the other memories, I am trying just to unlock, and by that I mean my goal has shifted of I already acknowledge being in the programs. So that was
Right.
my original goal was I or wasn't I in the programs? So now I'm like I was in. Got it. So now my goal is what projects or programs was I a part of? Not what did I do? I just wanted to know what I was a part of. So as I'm learning and talking with people, I'm gaining aspects of myself back, and I'm getting told of names of programs, and they kind of share with me what I was doing, and part of me absorbs it, but then it's like, okay, got it. That's
Right.
all I need. Okay. And my last session where I was retrieving aspects of myself, I realized, you know, we're trained to do stuff and, we did it really well. Why are we letting that go? Why are
Mm.
we, letting and viewing and I'm speaking for myself when I say this is
Yeah.
why let the bad connotation of what I know rule what I do with it. And so what
Yeah.
I did on my last session, and the guy I was working with loved this, was I took all my skills and I looked at the uniform and was like, okay, what aspects of this uniform can I use? So I took the pieces off, the tech off, and
Right.
destroyed the uniform. Then I went and said to the forces of light that I'm aligned with and said, here's tech, learn it. Let's
Right.
back engineer this. Let's
Right.
convert this from
Right.
from the dark to the light.
Absolutely.
And what I did was like there was one piece that is like a camouflage unit. And what it does is when if I was to say walk into a room full of say feline star seeds, star
Okay.
beings, I would look like a feline star being so that I would be accepted and that they
Right.
would talk to me. And then if I went to, say, a draconian facility, I would look like the draconian so that I would be accepted, so I could easily communicate and not be like, well, I'm with this organization and I'm here to talk about this or that. It was like, nope, it was designed to infiltrate, get in, get out, get information.
Get the knowledge. Yeah.
And so what I did was I took and some of my friends in the programs, we reverse engineered that camo tech, put it on our light suits, and I made it for them. And I gave them the
That's
pieces
cool.
so that it's on their uniforms. If they choose to activate it, they can. And they were so excited because it's like, yes, we can now camouflage to go into facilities so we can walk past instead of fighting our way to. We can
That's
just
very
walk,
smart.
do what we need to do, walk out.
That's very smart.
Yeah. And so he was like, he loved the fact that I was like reverse engineering and taking the evil components, so to speak, out of it
Right.
and putting the light in
That's
it
awesome.
and making it usable.
Of course. Yeah. Because you can do that. That's awesome, Michael.
So yeah,
Very smart.
yeah, and it also has helped me understand why certain things I could process easier than others. Like, so, for example, was the uniform that I had with the counter or with the camouflage was from a counterintelligence where I was intelligence officer for this unit and I had agreed with the light side that I would infiltrate
Mm,
the organization and I was made an intelligence officer. So I got all the intelligence documents
wow.
and was recruiting. I was doing all these things to help. And now that I've reclaimed and brought it out, I was like, hey, wait a minute. These skills served me really well over there.
Well, yeah.
That's what I brought to the light side. And I'm like, yeah, this is where, and it's like, I can now go, this is how they're going to act. This is what they're going to do. And
Right.
it's like,
Love
laid it
that.
all out. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we do when I was getting my aspects back from these facilities was downloading on a drive all the data that was mine or that I did and handing it over to the light so that they could learn from and understand what is
Undercover
going on.
agent man.
Yeah.
Secret agent man. That's
So,
awesome.
yeah. And so that's why, and it's like when I learned that, it's like it kind of makes sense why a lot of my memories are probably being blocked off is if I was, intelligence operating and
Right.
gathering intel from things, if I was to go public and say, hey, here I am, intelligence officer, you know,
Right.
doing this or that, then it's going to make my job even more hard. And so, yeah, and so it's, and I was told by a friend that a lot of it's being dismantled. So more and more people are going to be able to come forward and the memories are going to be brought back, I think, because they're in a process of negotiations of bringing about the end of the dark, fear-based control and handing it
Hallelujah.
over to the light-based.
Hallelujah. Well, I'm excited when so you're going to be discussing this like on your show and bringing other individuals who are part of it, and you're going to be talking about this, right? Are you going to lead by example with what you're sharing with me?
Well, I already go and rescue kids or star beans, so I was happy to hear my friend does that too.
That's awesome.
And as I shared with you that, and if you're in the astral and need help, I
I know.
really quick is my friends have started calling and I go and help them, and we're starting to help each other, and we're starting to stop operating individually and unifying. So
Ooh,
that's a change that's coming about, and it's slow to come because we're so programmed not to ask for help, and if we fail, we fail. We just try again
hmm.
another time. But now it's like there's a little bit of a shift of, yeah, when I need help, calling out for help and accomplishing the mission and not having to restart and redo everything.
Reached out to you before? Well, I mean, we've
Yeah,
talked and yeah, I've reached out to you and you've been there. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So the
it's the
blessing.
one job you never get a vacation from.
Yeah. Yep, that's for sure. Ah, all
But
right.
happy to do it.
All right, Michael. I think we're gonna be just about going on almost 2 hours, possibly, or an hour and I don't even know, but it's flown by again.
It
It's,
has.
it really has. So I hope that you will come back and do another podcast again when you have time.
You just let me know when and I will make it
Okay.
happen.
Thank you. So, is there any way besides contacting you, like they can reach out on your show, but is there any way that people can contact you or reach out if they want to? You want to be with people?
Sure, I will send you my link tree. That is the best way to get a hold of me because that
Okay.
has my website, my new imdb.com site.
Congratulations. Look at you
Thank you.
go.
It has all the locations of the shows if you want to watch them. And so, yeah, you can. I'll have to look to see if I have my email in there, but I think it is. If not, I'll add it. But the fun thing about the link tree is once I give it to you, I can make changes all day long and it automatically updates
That's cool.
everyone that has it. So
Okay.
keep in mind, if you ever are wondering, what am I up to or how to reach me, and you lose like or forget the name of a show, you can go to the link tree and it'll be right there.
Awesome. I'll post that in the comments and pin it so people will have your information. And then I'll also put it in the description.
Yeah, and you can find me on Facebook. I am under Michael Kopf now. I've changed my name
Oh, you
because, oh,
did? You
yes,
did?
because in July I will be at a conference emceeing and speaking.
Whoa, awesome. Congratulations. I love
Yes.
hearing about all this positive progression. This is incredible.
Yep. So
Wow.
I'm hoping I'll have the book done before I get there. If
Oh my
not,
gosh.
I'll just add it to the book.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
But
This is all great.
yeah,
You deserve
and
this. You work so hard, all of these different doors opening and all these avenues and everything. I'm so happy for you.
well, and I have to say ditto to you because you are up and coming. You're back,
Oh, thank you.
and I'm happy to see you back and that you're doing what you're doing and you're growing and look at you now doing video episodes.
I know, baby steps. Ba baby steps for me. So, yeah. Thank
Well, I'm
you.
proud of you for, evolving and deciding, what's best for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate love that. I appreciate love you.
I appreciate love you too. And I have to say that what's funny about that is I'll say gratitude to a lot of people or appreciation to a lot of people, but when you and I talk, it's always appreciate love.
Appreciate love. Yeah, it's kind of become our thing. So, all right, Michael. So, is there any advice or anything you want to leave with the guests that are watching, the viewers, before we say till next time?
I would say go easy on yourself. So many times we are so critical and so judgmental about ourselves that we create drama and create energies that don't even really exist because we make something more than what it is by our thoughts and our energies of
Yeah,
sitting there saying, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? So, my advice and hopes for everyone in 2025 is make this the year where you start to go easy on yourself and accept yourself where you are. And if you don't like a choice you made, make a different one. Don't beat yourself up about the choice. Just accept that's the choice that was made in that moment. You're in a new moment now, so that choice may no longer work. So
right.
simply stay in the moment and make your choices on each moment. There is no right or wrong.
That's right. I agree. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
All right. Until next time, thank you everyone for joining us. We're sending you so much love and gratitude. And yes. Aw. Can you see me? Yeah. And I always pray, we always pray that you're surrounded by the Most High God's love, protection, and blessings. Thanks, guys. Bye. Mwah. Thank
Bye.
you.